Hello dear students, I hope you're doing well. This video is about passive and active. We are going to talk about passive in the tenses that are important and that you have covered. And with that, we are going to touch upon the concept of transitivity and intransitivity. Before we get into the tenses, and how we change each tense to passive from their active state, we need to understand what we do exactly in passive. So in passive, when we have an active sentence like this, and an active sentence, we mean we know who the subject is. The subject is there. So it's clear. Who caught a cold? I did. And in passive, whatever you do, you need an object. And that is a cold. I will tell you how you can find the object of a sentence. Whenever you're given a sentence, for example, she wrote notes. Before you do anything, to the attempt that you try to find the object, that is the direct object, which is the most common used one when changing anything from active to passive, we must understand the components of your sentence. First, you have to find your subject, which is she. You have your subject here. This explanation right now is just to tell you how to find the object in your sentence. Then you find your verb. This is your verb. Now, in order, this here, it's pretty obvious that the notes is the direct object, but sometimes you have longer sentences. So, in a case like this, she wrote notes. How do we know that the note is the direct object? We create a question asking using the WH word of what. We create a question using the subject and the verb. What do we do? We say, what did she write? This question we made just to find out what? To find out the direct object. Now, the answer is what? What did she write? Notes. So, your answer, which is notes, is going to be what? Is equal to direct object. Now, just for you not to forget this, you can create equations just like this. You can just say direct object equals what, creating a question, what subject plus verb. So, once we found the direct object, we use the direct object. What do? We bring the object to the front, to the position of the subject. We have what? Notes. The tense of this verb is past. So, and please keep in mind one thing. This is plural. Notes were written. Now, if you're asked to write by agent, then you can say by her. This is how you turn it to passive. Now, what do we do exactly? We now don't have a subject here. We have something that is acted upon. What do we mean by that? Something is acted upon means something has received something. These notes were written. Now, please remember that you must have an object in order to work with passive. So far, this is these are the basics. Just to clarify another type of object, we have the indirect object. Now, we can use this sentence: she gave me the notes. Now, in a sentence like this, again, we try to do what? We try to find the direct object. This is not about passive, as for the time being. This is just to identify another type of object, which is called the indirect object. Now, we have the subject, we have the verb. What do? We have the equation for direct object. We say, what did she give? The answer is the notes. She gave the notes. So your direct object is the notes. Now, in order to find the indirect object, you must first find the direct object, which we have done so. Now, once you find the direct object, you ask the question to who. Once you ask the question, the answer to that question will become your indirect object. Now, in this case, we found the direct object by creating the question. We said, what did she give? The notes. Now, ask to whom? The answer is me. This here is the indirect object. The reason why this is explained is for you to have a bit of expansion to your knowledge on objects, and because you can also use this to do what? To create your passive sentence. For the time being, we are going to go to the tenses, starting with basic ones, from present simple. Now, in a sentence like this, these are all their active and passive rules. In a case like this, you have present simple, first one out of the presents. For the active state, you already know, we're going to use a very, very generic sentence. She writes notes. Or the notes. She writes the note or the letter. Now, this is a perfectly normal sentence. Active and it's present simple. Sorry. Now, what do? We change this to passive. First things first, what do? We find out the object. She, subject, verb, and now what did she write? The letter. This is your direct object. In this case, just object, because now the rule to pacifies present simple tense is, by the way, this here is object plus is, am, or are plus past participle. The past participle is something that is very much used above everything else in passive. How do we do this? We bring the direct object, which is the letter. Of course, these three are used depending on the singularity or plurality of your object. Here, the letter is singular. So you have what? The letter. Okay, now you do what? The letter here is singular, you have is, and you do what? You look at all the time. Here you know this is present simple. All the time look at the tense of your active sentence. The letter is, what is your verb? Write. The PP of write is written. The letter is written. That's for simple present or present simple, however you want to call it. Now, for present progressive or continuous, as many other people would know it, we have what? We have subject plus is, am, or are, and plus the verb in ing. Now, what do we do in the passive state? We use the same sentence. She is writing the note. We use this example so much because it will help you to notice the different structural changes. Now, the object is again the note. Is what happens to this after this is the passive rule, by the way. Object plus is or plus being and then the verb in PP form. The note is being written. Keep in mind you can't exclude this. This is a part of the rule itself in terms of passivization. We go to present perfect. As you know the rule, we say she has, since it's a singular subject, she has written the notes. Now we are going to pluralize the object. Now what happens to this in passive? The rule becomes what? Object plus have and has plus been plus PP. So we do what? The notes. Now have we use for plural, has for singular. The notes have been, the PP of write is written. This is what we do. Please always focus on the tense of your active sentence, because you never know, your teacher might bring back a multiple choice question. They will give you a sentence and they will give you 4 multiple choices and tell you which one is the passive is the correct passive sentence for the active statement that your teacher has done. And you see all of the sentences are correct technically, but one of them is correct in terms of tense. Now, since we are done with present simple, we go to present progressive, present perfect progressive. Keep in mind this is not popular. It's not impossible, but we haven't focused on this in class, and because of awkward constructions, meaning that the sentence becomes awkward, it becomes too long, and many people will deem and label it as weird, which this is the passive state of the sentence, which if we are going to directly give a passive sentence, it would be like this: the notes have been being written. This is just an awkward sentence structure. Therefore, this is not something we'll cover for now. In past time, you have past simple. Again, we start with the simplest version of past. We say, for example, she wrote the notes. Now this is exactly as you would have done the present, but the difference between present simple and past simple, besides its usages, besides the timeline, the basic stuff, is present simple is and uses is, am, or are. Here we have was or were. Now, changing this to passive, you have the notes. Now, the notes is, this is a plural phrase. Now, the notes were written. Nothing too hard, nothing difficult, nothing for you to get confused about. Now we go to past continuous. Here we already have the examples lane. Now for past continuous or past progressive, you have subject plus was and were plus ing. So you know, I was washing my car. Now if we change this to passive, we say my car was being. This again is part of the rule. Washed. PP of wash. Now, for past perfect, we have its active state, subject plus had, plus PP. Past, we mean past participle. We have I had a car. Keep in mind, this is just a slightly confusing sentence. Sometimes a teacher might use this to trick the student. Before we do anything of that, we just say he what to say, he had written the letter. Now, this here is the passive state of it. We say the letter had, here in PBF been, had been written. This is what you use. Now in a case like this, when you have double hats, it means one hat is already the auxiliary, which is a part of the rule. The other is you have, you've previously had a have verb as the verb, and when you change have to past participle, you change it changes to had. Therefore, I had a car. You say a car had been had. This is just something to put it out there. Some teachers will do this to confuse students, and so on. Now, future time. The simple future. This once you step into future, sometimes this is not even for the passive states in their active states. Sometimes future, as you progress into the depth of them, they become somewhat confusing for students. For future time, for simple future, you have subject plus will plus base. Of course, that is after each of these things, which are not mentioned here. You have your object, which is what you need to work with in your passive and active states. Now, the sentence we have is Nui will get a car. You have the subject, and we go everything according to rule. You see? This is the will, this is the base of it, and this is the object. A car will be got, or for American, will be got. Now, or you can say she will write the notes. The notes will be in the beginning. Will doesn't, when you use will, there's no There's nothing to determine the plurality or anything. The notes or the note doesn't matter. It still will be written. This is how you change it to passive. Now, for future progressive and for a future progressive is not used in passive voice. This is just one of those tenses, along with a few other things that I will explain shortly. And for future perfect, this is the active state of it. Subject plus will plus have plus be plus past participle. And here we have object plus will plus have plus been plus past participle, which is not something to focus on that much, but just know it. For example, he will have received the letter. The letter will have been received. This is the passive state of the sentence. This is the active state. Now, there are tenses that you can't change them to passive, and the tenses are these. Future continuous tense, as we have here. These rules that are written next to them, they are the rules that these have in their active state. Now, these will not be brought back for you to, and you're not going to be asked, hey, this is we have this sentence in such an active state in such a tense, and you will not be required to change them to passive. Just know the active structure. So when you see a structure like this, you just basically say that, oh, this is not changed. And this can be changed to passive. That's all you need to know about this. And also sentences that have intransitive verbs. So this takes us to another subject, which is transitivity. You don't need all of this. We are just going to work with a few main points. First of all, when we talk about transitivity, we mean that it goes beyond something from here, it goes beyond this point. So what do we mean exactly by beyond? So when we have a sentence such as the thing we used all of the place, she wrote the note. In a case like this, when we talk about transitivity, the verb wrote is transitive. Why? How do you know something is transitive? When it receives an object, when it goes beyond the what? The verb. This is the general concept of transitivity. Now, if you have something like this, she slept, there is no object here. So this sentence can't be turned into passive. Why? Again, no object. You see, she slept makes perfect sense on its own. She slept, that's it. You don't have an object. You can't ask the direct object question. You can't ask the question to find out the direct object. You can't say, what did she sleep? No, it doesn't make sense. So, for verbs like this that do not take an object and that do not go beyond are called intransitive verbs. So, in the exam, if you get something like this and you're asked, why can't this be turned into passive? You have to say, because the verb is intransitive. It doesn't go beyond the verb. Now, we mentioned earlier this sentence. She gave me the letter. Now, we found out the direct object, which is the letter, subject, verb, and indirect object. Now, in a case like this, when you have a sentence that takes two objects, you can do it in both. You can passivize the sentence with both of the objects. Now, in the first try, we use the direct object to pacify. We say the letter. What tense do we have? Past simple. Was given. And then you have what remains in the sentence is the indirect object. So how do we put this back here? We say to me. The letter was given to me. Now, the other way in which you can write the passive state of it, you use the indirect object, use the me, but keep the one thing in mind. Me is an object pronoun. An object pronoun can only function as an object, but we put it in a subject position. Therefore, me is the equivalent of what? I. So this changes back to I, to its subject state, since it comes in the very beginning of it. So I, what do we have next? I was given. See, the direct object remains the letter. This is all that there is to it. If your teacher specifies, hey, you can do it, your teacher gives you a sentence like this, and he or she tells you, hey, change this to passive in any way you want. You can use the direct object, as we did here, or the indirect object, as we did here. If your teacher is asking you to do it in all the possible ways, you have to use both of them. However, the most common and most popular way, if you are asked to do it in any way you want, is basically the direct object in the beginning. I hope this helped, and good luck to all of you.